what is the agenda for today's session, right? So we'll talk a bit about what is networking. We'll talk about how network works, right? What exactly is network per se? Then we'll talk about various kind of networks. Yeah. We will also talk about different kind of networks in the sense what is enterprise network, what is data center network, and things like that. Yeah. Right. We will also talk about the rules and regulations. In networking world, we call it protocol, right? And we'll then talk about the key in networking, which is TCP/IP, right? And what exactly it means. Then we'll talk about how networking is as a career path. Is it helpful? Is it, good career path? It is not. We will also talk about, how easy or difficult it is to learn, right? So among you guys, do you have any prior experience in networking?
Yes, I do.
I am trying to see who is talking. Sorry, Teams is a little tricky. So yeah,
It was me, Jitendra.
Jitendra, right. How about others? Varun, Sabrish, and I'm not getting the name. Preetham, right?
Even I've got some knowledge.
So can you take a minute to explain what you guys do so that I can talk about something that will help you and in the longer run?
So, yeah, I'll just give a quick intro about myself. Myself, Jitendra, I have around 7.5, close to 8 years of experience in network and network security. So I have worked on Cisco devices, Cisco appliances like ASA firewalls and switches and routers in the past. And currently, I'm working on Checkpoint firewalls as well. And I have also worked on a couple of wireless vendors. Like earlier, I worked on Hive Manager. Now I'm working on Meraki.
Okay.
Also, I have some experience on Velo Cloud SD-WAN.
Oh, nice. So you are quite into networking then, right?
Yeah,
Jitendra?
yeah, yeah.
This course may seem a little basic to you, but
Okay.
I'll try to make it useful for you as well.
Thank you.
Right. Sabrish, Varun, I think Preetham dropped off, but never mind. So how about two of you?
I've got overall 3.10 years of experience. So 2 years I was working in Muscat. So there it was like for the CCTV camera and security systems, like the normal
Okay.
intrude any issues with the bank and issues. There we were like doing. I've seen these routers and switches, but I have not worked in depth in it. And I came back here and learned few of this routing and switches. But as Jitendra said, I have not worked on the multiple devices. I just worked only in Cisco, and I just went to a training in CCNA where I could learn more what is happening in Cisco and routers and switches and the firewalls.
So you do not have any kind of experience, or did I not
I
understand
had
that?
experience, but not a vast experience. What is happening? I know like what is it in the routers and switches? How is packet flow and how was it configuration done? The basic configuration being done.
Got you. Okay. So let's see, right?
Yeah.
I'll start with a little bit of history in today's session, right? The first computer you guys would know, ENIAC, right? It was a large computer. Computers back days were kind of, fitting into whole room. right? Very large, very heavy computers. So they were not portable like today's world, right? There were no desktops, there were no laptops, no tabs, right? And things like that. So these computers, the data in them was also immobile because it has to be either printed or it has to be in the card or it has to be into the spool, right? In the tape. So the objective was, how do we move this across, right? Because earlier computers were not only built in silos, they were also built into many places in the world as part of research programs, right? But they were not very well connected. So ENIAC was the first one you guys would know. Do you know there was something called a MANIAC as well? Right? Very interesting name for a computer though, right? And do you guys know what was the first network that was built ever?
No,
Yes.
sorry. No, I don't.
Okay. So earlier computers, the first computers and the networks, they were built mostly because of research, right? So universities, yes, but mostly government funding also. So the first network that was built was ARPANET, right? It was built first to transfer data between the computers, which were pretty much immobile, right? And it was also built to kind of as a countermeasure to any attack in case if anything happens over the US, right? On the US, if there is an attack. They wanted to make sure that they have a communication network other than what Army uses as Morse code and, other things, right? So government agencies started to fund the networking, then network, build up, then universities came and internet service providers came in. And alone in US, if you just see the map, there were, and these are just a few, there are tons of ISPs in the US, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, right? They kind of built up a complex network eventually, right? Today, our network looks something like this. So if you look at this here, in this area, we have our ATM connected to a router that is connected to the Azure distribution going to the core. So these circles that you see here, right, the oval-shaped circle structures, they are representing core, right? So there are multiple ISPs if you look at this here. And let's say if this was a country all across, so this would represent a core in a way, right? So in network, there is a three-tier architecture at a minimum. There is a core, there is a distribution, and then there is the edge or the customer side, CPEs, right? And what do we have is, in networking, we have to manage all of this. All this core is running on certain devices called routers and switches, right? All of these connectivities are happening that we see, but it is not visible to us. So mobile, we see, we use home office, right? Other remote area ATMs. We see they connect somehow to the network in the core, but it is not visible. But still, they need management. Somebody needs to have the skill.
Sorry to disturb you. Have you shared your screen? Because we are not able to see it actually.
Oh, is it? How about others? Nobody
I can see.
can see. Okay, let me stop and reshare.
Yeah. Now I'm able to see. Thank you.
No problem. Right. So here. Okay, yeah. Right. So I was talking that this is the core, right? Let's say 3 different ISPs. Somebody has to manage the core network, then somebody has to manage the distribution, the edge. And while the user enjoys connectivity, they are kind of impervious to the fact that there is so much of work going behind in the scene, right? Behind the scene. Now, if you look at this, can anybody tell me what is this thing here? Can you identify this picture?
It looks like a VSAT antenna or something.
This is actually a VSAT. It looks very similar to the antennas that we get for D2S today.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, it is pretty much the same antenna other than the technology being used in it, right? It connects with satellite connects to a base
Satellite, yeah.
station, right? And then the base station connects somewhere into the core, right? From the distribution to the core, and then the network connects all together. Without these, we will not have any kind of connectivity to remote peripherals like an ATM outside the city or in an area where connectivity is not there, right? But in ATMs where there is a branch, there is a connectivity, you can always piggyback onto the branch network, which comes as a router with a lease line or a dial-up or a broadband, things like that. Similarly, in today's world, we also have our flight network, if you see, right? So usually the base stations provide them connectivity from the base, from the Earth. They also have a connectivity from the satellite. So whichever is more reliable and more available, they pick it up and then they provide connectivity to the people inside the flight. Yeah. And if you take some communication examples, right? Let's take this remote ATM, for example. So from here, satellite connection uplink is there. Then to the base station, there is a downlink, connects to the edge router, to your core, to your another ISP maybe, because these ISPs connect using various technologies now that you guys know networking. Usually BGP or similar technologies they use to connect, advertise their routes, right? So that each knows everybody else's network. And then they connect to the end station. That is either a bank or an office or whatever it is towards the end of it. Right? Any questions on this one? Okay, great. So networking at a global scale, right? How network is at a global scale, right? So similar to the picture that we saw earlier, consider these small circles as ISPs in a country, right? They have a very complex network of connectivity with each other, right? These are not always straight lines as it seems, but there are transatlantic wires, trans-Pacific wires that goes through to connect one country from another, right? Usually, let's say for India, there will be something called a gateway, right? Major telecoms have their own gateways, which connect them to either Singapore or to the nearest neighbor. And from there, they connect to the rest of the globe. Right, that is how the connectivity works for every ISP, and they are able to, or rather, we are able to connect to the internet, and we are able to access everything on the globe. Right. So how does this happen usually? So if you look at it, there are a couple of things to kind of understand. One is inside this ISP, what is going on, right? So usually inside ISP, you will have an IGP, right? Or you will have a static route setting as well. Static routes are still useful, right? They are not kind of out of fashion. Then you certainly have some kind of IGP. From ISP to another ISP, you will usually have something like a EGP, which is BGP or some other similar protocol connecting to the ISPs, right? And from there, neighborship happens. One ISP learns about the routes here. So let's say if this one knows 10.x, this one knows 192.x, right? This fellow will advertise to him, and this fellow will advertise back to him, and that way they both will learn how to connect to each other's network, and so on. Now, if you look at the routing table that get advertised at an ISP level from one ISP to another, one, it has to be summarized, right? Two, it is very large, right? And three, if you look a bit on security side, right? The question will come whether it is authenticated or not authenticated, right? So a couple of considerations there. This is why one needs to know the right way of configuring how to advertise or how to connect from one ISP to another, right? And then from there to edge, from edge to base station to satellite uplinks, and there is a whole IoT that is not depicted here. So there are many things that are dependent on the network, right? But again, from a user's point of view, the user doesn't see it. It's impervious to them. It just happens behind the scene. Right? Any questions or comments so far? No, okay. Now, this is a view of internet. If you would look at this, right? This is called Optiv project, right? So if you look on this side of the picture, this is a high level view of how internet looks like, right? These small dots, or rather the large dots looking like, stars from far are something that represent major ISPs, major arteries, right? And this is a closer view of how things are, right? So you see the branches, you see the, edge, then you see the distribution, everything. And there is just so many of them. There is just so much of it, right? That it always demands a certain skill set. Right? Now, coming to addressing, right? How does internet talk? Or how do we talk to the internet? So there is certain things called protocols, right? Protocols are nothing but rules, I can say. They are kind of traffic rules on how to communicate over the internet. They are like, rules of what should I write and what response should I get back and things like that. Yeah. So very simple. The first thing is to identify anybody over the network, we need IP addresses, right? IP addresses today are usually of two kinds, version 4 and version 6. We'll talk more about that, maybe later. Subnetting, CIDR, NAT, these things are usually, to manage the IP addresses. How do we use them? How do we efficiently use them rather, right? Then this one here we are talking about a little bit, as in, let's say an IP address. How does a computer understand it, right? What does a computer need to see to understand an IP address? Let's say 123.89.46.72, right? So okay, so Jitendra and Varun, I am sure you guys are aware of subnet mask IP address. Just confirming, are you guys aware, or you want me to take a little bit deeper into this?
I'm
Yeah,
aware.
Come again.
I'm aware of it.
Right. So IP addresses, then comes the protocols, other protocols, right? Like TCP/IP itself is a protocol suite. How it is managed, right? What dictates how to communicate using TCP/IP? There is a OSI layer, and then there is a DoD TCP/IP framework to understand how computers should communicate to each other over the internet, right? Similar to that, we have multiple other things: routing protocol, switching protocol, wireless protocol, right? Security protocols like ESP, AH for VPN, and then HTTPS for web browsing securely, and there are many other things, right? Any questions on this page, guys?
Nothing. We are good. Thank you.
So what skills are in demand? Let's take a look at that, right? Routing, static route is actually very much requirement, but it is not something that you get hired upon if you know static routing, right? So for enterprise, you must know a little bit of EIGRP, a little bit of OSPF, multi-area, right? You should know ISIS to a certain extent, because there are some companies, some networks which still use it. A bit of BGP, just so that you could neighbor to the or kind of peer to the ISP. But if it is large, it depends if it is using BGP as an IGP also, right? If you are talking about service provider routing, then yes, BGP, MPLS, traffic engineering, right? L2 VPNs, these are multicast, anycast. These are the things that are sought after usually, right? So if you have skill on these, then your job is for sure, right? You get hired pretty easily as long as you can demonstrate that you know these skills and you have hands-on, right? Switching protocols, similar things, STP, RSTP, right? HSRP, VRRP, port channel, how it works. So to kind of manage a complex switching technology, you should have all these knowledges, all these protocol knowledge in enterprise. When you talk about service provider, then you're talking about various other protocols like frame relay, right? PPP, PPPoE, right? How DSLAM is managed and things like that, right? On the wireless side, we have CSMA, CA, WEP, WAP, and many other protocols that needs to be known, right? So it's a complex skill to have and very niche one as well, right? Other protocols, again, rules and regulations, DHCP, DNS, HTTP, HTTPS, and things like that. Do you guys know that there is a company which is a pure play DNS service provider and solution company on DNS?
Sorry, come again.
Do you know that there is a company which is a pure play DNS management company? They provide solutions and services for managing DNS in an organization, in enterprise.
I am not aware of, but I have worked with some third party, we have some third party vendor who manages our DNS registrar, but I'm not aware.
Got you. So DNS registry usually is of many flavors, right? One is the free one. When you buy a domain, you get a free
Right.
DNS management service, right?
Yeah.
Then there is a premium or a paid one. So
Yes.
service provider like a GoDaddy or whatever is your ISP, they give you that
Yeah.
service. What they essentially are doing is that they're making sure, one, you're secured from any kind of DNS attack. Two, your DNS propagates well to the entire globe and it kind of updates quite frequently so that if you have any new pages coming up or if you have any subdomain coming up, you don't have to wait for 24 hours, right? After that, there is also multiple points of presence from where they advertise this DNS, rather than just depending on one server or two servers as a name server to kind of flag it, right? That's pretty much high level of premium services. Then there are solutions which do this for you. So for example, Infoblox, you would have heard this company, right? They started off as a pure play DNS solution provider to the organizations, and they're very large now, right? So point being that don't think this is just one protocol, right? In networking, the world started off from connectivity, but then while we connected everything, we came across multiple problems. Now that problem could be very specific to a protocol. That problem could be a very specific to a business. And then there is a company or there is a startup around it, right? So the opportunities are endless in that regard. And last but not least, we have cloud, right, coming in. So from on-prem to cloud, from private cloud to public cloud, from one cloud to another cloud, how do you connect? That also is part of networking, right? These are the things that are being sought after in today's market in various flavors. Any questions here? Okay. Now, networking as a career, what does this mean, right? So one could start off as an analyst, as an engineer, right? Spend some time there, then you can grow as a lead or principal engineer or as an architect or a manager, right? So there are two ways to grow. You get from technical and you continue in technical and you keep growing with your experience, right? Two, you start off as a technical or as an analyst person, and then from there you move into the management side of it, because of course there is team, there is budget, there is the whole bureaucracy, right, to manage. So you get into the management side, you become manager and senior manager, and from there AVP and VP and so on, right? So the growth is kind of huge. Remuneration also, right? So to start with, you start solving smaller problems. And as you grow, you start to solve bigger problems, and thus your paycheck also grows, And then there are so many of, on-site or kind of onshore offerings as well. You could go to another country, you could work there as a network engineer or as a principal engineer, right? You could make money in dollars or in euros or in, depending on where you are. Right. And in India also the pay scale is pretty good nowadays for somebody who knows either enterprise or service provider level networking. Satisfaction. So quite honestly, networking is not easy task, right? It requires lots of mindset, very focused mindset to understand, right, what you're doing, because it's multiple lines and lines of configurations, many devices to manage. You need to understand about, how to troubleshoot, right? You should be in focus when there is an issue and you would be needed during an issue. So again, if there is a problem, you have to solve it. And the larger the problem that you can solve, the bigger your paycheck and the more satisfaction you get by solving that problem, right? So when in networking, the mindset should be that I'm here because I'm a problem solver, right? The mindset where you think that, oh God, there is a problem again. That mindset is not going to help because this is the world where we are there to solve the problem. And as long as there is a problem, we are in the business, right? So it's a little bit like medicine. As long as there are diseases, there is a doctor needed, right? There is a whole hospital staff needed, right? Any questions here, guys?
No, thank you.
Okay. What are the major players where you can go and maybe seek a job or where you can get employment? So because you guys are from the industry, Cisco, Juniper, I don't know if you know Brocade. There is Extreme Networks, Aruba, HP, Dell, and the list goes on. There are tons of OEMs out there today, right? Then you can get employment as various ISPs also, who buy the networking gears and then they put that in their own, infra in their own data centers to make a core or to make an edge and things like that, so that the end user can use it. Then there are enterprises which use network. Pretty much everybody does today, from a hospital to a car dealership to a car manufacturer to a chip manufacturer like Intel, right? And then there are resellers and service integrators who buy from OEMs and then provide services to either ISPs or to enterprise, right? To kind of manage or to implement, configure, manage, troubleshoot the whole networking equipment, right? So the opportunity is endless as long as you have the right skill, right? So I'll take a pause here, guys, and I want to hear a little bit from you guys. What has been your experience so far when you talk about networking or when somebody talks about networking?
As you rightly said, it is more of problem solving skills and not feeling like backing off. Oh God, again there is a problem, because that's what always happens. Whatever happens, yeah, if there is any server issue or application issue, everywhere or everything, there is a blame going to the networkers or network team, saying that it is the network issue. So I feel that problem solving is the best thing, and that feels very good, being a network engineer.
Oh, good to hear. And how about you, Varun?
You should be patient enough because there will be a lot of issues coming up. Like it's not like the same issue, same network issue coming up. Every day there will be different network issues. So we get to learn new things. And if you do it hurry then it will affect the environment. So you should be patient enough to like how can you sort it out and learn out and just like write it down like when whatever happens and you can able to clear it soon.
Very well said. So good that you understand these things because now you're in the industry. What is that you're looking at? What is your next step, from here? If you guys can share.
For me, I actually I want to pursue further, in cybersecurity. So I can go more into security, network security, or let's say IT security. Uh, you know, because there is also nowadays we have more requirement of cybersecurity engineer, and everywhere we need people to protect their network or resources. Uh, right? So yeah, that's what the future plans are.
And you have already done firewalls and perimeter security devices. Have you worked on WAF or DDoS or things like that?
WAF I have not worked on. We do have, but I don't have much exposure on WAF yet.
Okay.
But I have worked on perimeter firewalls.
Mostly firewall. And you said checkpoint, right?
Yeah, checkpoint as well as Cisco ASs.
How about FTD,
Sorry.
the firepower?
No, I have not worked on firepower yet because the problem is before we go to firepower, the company decided, to switch to checkpoint, and now also we are going to get FortiGate, so maybe I'll not get to work on uh, firepower devices. Yeah.
Got you. So your ecosystem is going to be checkpoint and FortiGate mostly.
Yes, and maybe Palo Alto as well. So it will be kind of flavors of devices. Yeah, depending on the the local business.
Right. I think that is a good thing in a way as well. And the technology has changed over period, right? When I started off close to 18 years ago,
Yeah.
Cisco used to, manufacture PIX. I don't know if you know this name, right?
Yes.
So PIX is today a legacy firewall, right?
Legacy,
And
yeah.
they used to manage that, and everything was kind of built into one. So you have a box, it has a CPU, it has its RAM, and then the CPU is doing everything from packet filtering to decision making to application filtering. It's doing everything possible, right? Then eventually everybody realized, okay, why don't we separate these two things, control plane and data plane, right?
Right.
Started off from routing, to be frank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Juniper was the pioneer in this with their M series, T series, and MX series devices, which they implemented in core, right? So earlier it was M&T. They kind of used to have really large throughput in the core, close to 400 Gbps and things like that. Very high throughput, right? Then Cisco followed the suit from there. They have been kind of cats and dogs from the day zero. So then Cisco came up with, and Cisco had a really good turnaround with their devices. So I in India, I worked on Cisco for many years, right, in field and from the back office. Very stable, rugged devices. As long as you don't touch them, once they are functioning, it just works perfectly. It can handle any kind of extreme environmental conditions, right? But the OS was a little bit tricky always. So slowly they streamlined it with the Catalyst switches, and then they further built more, capabilities into it. They also followed the suite of separating control and data plane. And because Palo Alto guys, have certain experience from Juniper SRX. I don't know if you know this tidbit, right? Juniper and Palo Alto were in a very long lawsuit for a very long time. Juniper was accusing them of stealing the technology of control and data plane separation and things like that. If you look at their architecture, it's like, mirror images of the same thing. So eventually it got settled, and Palo Alto started to follow this control plane and data plane, and that is kind of the beauty of their device. Plus their area, what is that, 42, I guess, right? They have a area 42 or area, yeah, 42.
Yeah.
Very good portal for threat intel and malware related analysis. Right, so I think you'll have a very good exposure with Palo Alto and FortiGate. FortiGate is also doing tons of things in cybersecurity, especially around social engineering. Right. How about you, Varun? What is your next step from here, if you don't mind?
For me, I want to get into this network security and want to be a security officer, chief security officer. So need to learn more on this networking things. I just have an exposure in Cisco itself. I don't have any other exposure, so I'm trying to learn more things about this. Now you told me about a lot of things, and even Jitendra told, so I got to know more things. Like this is what happening. There are a lot of things happening, and just started in this field.
Right. If you're going to get into network security, obviously the first point to start should be your firewalls. And I don't know if your environment. Are you employed right now in some company right now, Varun?
No, right? No.
You're looking for a job. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you can, but if you can get some hands-on F5 load balancer, right?
Okay.
F5 is a very good device, and it has some really good features when it comes to load balancing. And to a certain extent, it is also kind of a web filter, right? And if you learn how to make signatures on F5, that is an amazing thing to happen, right? People will pay any amount to get somebody who is a F5 signature champion, right? Somebody who can write signatures in their F5. But it requires certain skill in coding as well. So I don't know if you have certain coding background, either of you. But if you have that, then it's a good way to look at, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Now, what do we do? So we are providing courses into these areas, right? In networking, we have courses on wireless networking. And again, before we talk about what courses we have, see, in the world, there are many kind of things. One is certainly certifications. For example, let's say CCNA, JNCIA, CCNP, JNCIS, and equivalent certifications, right? These courses are not going to go by the book. These courses are majorly planned so that you get job ready, right? You should get hands-on. The guy should get hands-on. And from there, they get to handle the real life scenarios with us, right? Once you have done this in your lab environment, once you have configured, implemented, troubleshot everything, then you actually go to the interviews. That helps you crack the interview because then you are talking sense. You're not just talking about certification. So I'll give you an example. This is an old one. I don't know if it happens today. So in CCNA exam, I don't know if you both are certified CCNA, but if you take CCNA close to 5-6 years ago, you will learn OSPF area 0, right? But in area 0, nobody only uses area 0 in enterprise. Everybody wants multiple areas to be used and configured and managed, right? And in the exam also, they will talk to you about multiple areas, how to do route redistribution, how to manage area, stub area, how to manage this area, how to manage that area, and so on, right? So not to kind of put down a certification, they are good from a learning point of view, but there is a clear disconnect between what interviewer wants or what the job role demands and what the certification offers, right? So that disconnect is where we come in. Our courses are majorly defined on the fact that if you do this, right, you should be able to do this in an enterprise or a service provider environment as well. It is not just theory, not just, textbook and things like that. You get your lab, as long as you have a computer which can virtualize and do things, you have a lab. And from there, you go and do things, right? So we have courses on networking, routing, switching, enterprise and service provider, Cisco ISE, Prime, right? CDN and DNS, virtualization related. And then we have a ton of courses on information security from Security Plus, which is the entry level kind of. Then ISO, CISA, CISM, risk management, right? And if you're more into detailed or kind of extensive information security, then SOC understanding, how to implement SOC all by yourself, right? In an enterprise situation, then advanced cybersecurity and so on, right? So if you guys are interested into any of this, you can contact me. You would have the email address, the email that you received from me today, contact@networkersworld.com. right? You can contact me there. And with that, I'll end today's session and I'll leave it to you guys for some questions where I can help you, where I can, add some value to you. Understand this was a little basic because the target audience is from 0 to 3 years, right? But I'm happy to connect with you guys to kind of help you with whatever helps you in your career. So Varun and Jitendra, do you guys have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to get into this networking field. So I just saw this link through the LinkedIn. So that's why you sent me this link and I wanted to enter this. So I got to learn more things like what is happening in this. So how can I go more depth? Like, is it necessary to do these courses or without doing courses, just going through YouTube and LinkedIn pages, is that enough? Like,
LinkedIn and YouTube, as well as some blogs and forums, Networkers World included, they are good sources. I'll not say they are not. But the problem is that, many times you would understand that there is too much of information, right? And then when you go to YouTube or any blog and any forum or any kind of free session, right? What happens is that you have to adapt to the style of the trainer. The trainer doesn't adapt the style to you that suits to you,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there is a difference there. Because on
Yeah.
YouTube, it's like a monologue. I'm going to talk to somebody, I'm going to explain, and I'm going to put the video there. Now you have to tune into my mindset that what I was thinking at the moment. And then from there, you have to kick in and then you have to do things. Plus, you are very dependent on the tools that I have. Maybe you cannot have those tools, right? So what then? Right? So just think about that. What happens is that YouTube is a good source, right? Lots of knowledge there. But you will not know which is the right one, which is kind of right one, which is not the right one, which is extremely right one. So there are various flavors out there, right? So
Right.
you need to be careful about that. But they are good learning source. They are very good learning source. We have a YouTube channel as well, right? And where Priyanka and I post things. So you can subscribe to that. Plus, there are other people also, right? There are people who have done whole cybersecurity course on YouTube, right? It's just that you have to tune into their mindsets if you want to go that route, right? So they are good sources, no doubts about that.
The courses you have told, right? The basic for the routing and switching. Is there any like months? Like this is for 3 months, 4 months, or is it like for the? It depends upon our
Yes.
studies. Or?
So 3 months or 4 months, yes, certainly. But we are working a little differently this time around. What we are doing is, so let's say you join a course and then you run a complete sprint, you complete a batch. Then you realize, okay, I need to review certain topics. You are welcome to join the next batch as well, right? You can continue to pick up only the topics that you want to focus on, right? This is to make sure that you get the right time and the right attention on the areas which have longer learning curve, where more focus is needed.
Okay. So recently, I just went to an institute to learn about this networking and working. So their aim was to just crack the interview level, like only the main topics they were talking. So I thought like, why are they talking only the main things?
Yeah, so I
Only
know.
like how to crack the interview, but the interview you guys won't ask that questions. It's like they know and they have been following this from past 25 years, and there are people who's cracking it and going as well. But in my point of view, I don't think that is working for me. So I started to learn more things. I got to learn more things about this. So I want to know more. Like, is it that good to learn only the main topics? Because going in enterprises, you need to learn all the things. Right? So will they give you provide the whole thing? So they will just give you only the company stuff like what to learn, what to happen.
You're correct. See, main topics are necessary, no doubts about that. For example, if you learn routing, OSPF is necessary, multi-area is necessary, what is a stub network is necessary, right? How to
Yes.
manage it is necessary, and things like that. And if you kind of mug up questions on that, you may be able to crack interview. But is it about interview, right? Think about it.
No,
You got
no,
interviewed,
it's not about the
you
interview.
selected.
It's all about the career.
Correct, right? So, and in many people's mind, it's more about job, right?
Yeah.
They believe that once they land the job, they can do. But trust me, networking guys usually are not needed when the day is nice and cozy. It's like army, right? When there is everything quiet, the world is working fine, you're just enjoying your time. And suddenly there is a war, which means there is an outage. Now your skill is going to be tested. In outage, you don't remember the interview questions. You have to have the real skills of the protocol, the knowledge, right? How to troubleshoot, how to build the logic, how to track packet from step A to step B to C and D and to the destination, right? You should have that kind of skill. If you don't, then it will come out. It will be visible to your manager, the guy who interviewed you, and things like that. So it's very easy to kind of get exposed, if I can use that word, right?
Right.
It is very easy to get exposed. And then if you are exposed continuously, then you know what will happen, right? It's obvious. Right? Nobody wants a slacker in the team, especially in the team where critical infrastructure is, being managed.
Right.
So I appreciate the guys who are trying to help people get the job by just helping them crack the questions. But it's like a question bank. I don't know, in your college, I think you would have seen that there are many question banks and books available last 7 years, last 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? You just read them, mug it up, and pass it off because you know these things are never going to be used. Right? But if you think, let's take a car example, in that context. If you are trying to learn driving a car, and I tell you, don't drive, right? Just read this book, learn all the questions, remember it, go pass the exam, you'll get a DL, and then I will put you in the car, go drive your car. How confident will you be to drive the car?
No,
right?
you will not be. Yeah.
If not for others' life, you'll be worried about yours. You'll be worried about your own car, your own investment. You'll be worried about the law, right? That, yeah, I have just studied this book. I have never sat behind the wheel. I have never driven. I have never changed the gear. I have never, put a turning light while doing all these things, right? There was nobody actually yelling at me in the traffic. There was nobody, there was no scenario where there was an accident on the road and then I had to navigate a complex traffic scenario, right? So you will not be confident to drive a car. So trainings like this help you drive the car, to simply put, right?
Right.
So this is why YouTube is still a good material. Those interview discussions are still good. They help you in certain way. But is that the right way, and will that help you achieve a career? No.
No.
Right? You will need to have a solid foundation on which you can build and build and build and build. Right?
Yes. So now currently where are you? Are you in India or outside India?
No, I'm in Germany. I live in Germany. Yeah.
Okay. So you started working, then you left to Germany.
Yeah, I was working in India, right, for a very long time. And then felt like, okay, moving on is a good thing, right? Learn new things, learn new culture, and we moved on.
Okay.
Right. And this is kind of a way to give back to the society, some free sessions to the guys, some kind of information, right? And just so that they also understand what is the career. I think in India, networking still is not a very good topic in colleges and universities and places.
No, still it's it's not. Still, it is the same. Like they don't want to upgrade the things. They just know network. They just want only internet. How internet is working. They would do Instagram. That is enough. Like what is happening in the world, nobody knows.
Correct. I remember Todd Lamley from the college, so I don't know if that is still the course book, but though it is a good one, it still doesn't give you the real life troubleshooting configuration under the pressure, under the timelines, right? Things like that, how it works.
Yes.
If you're interested in any of these courses, I'll flash it on the screen again in case if you want a screenshot of this. So you can contact. Right, you can contact on the contact@networkersworld.com. You would have an email from that email ID, right? You can write onto that, you can address it to me, then we can get in touch. Okay?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Any other questions you have?
No.
Okay, good to talk to you, Varun. Right?
Same
Thanks for joining.
you.
Yeah. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.